Hi there, you're listening to What's New Today, a kids and family podcast where we tackle the big, the small, and the downright bizarre events shaping our world, all through the curious minds of kids aged 8 to 15. This is your host Sangeeta. I'm from India and I've mastered the art of explaining complex topics to young geniuses, mostly while Googling for it myself. Today, we're diving into the world of Captain Underpants, the book series. But more importantly, we're talking about the man behind this superhero, Dav Pilkey. As a kid, Dave was a poster child for troublemaker, constantly punished for being, let's say, uncooperative in class. He sat in a corner doodling his way to a future bestseller. Fast forward a few decades, and his Captain Underpants series has sold over 80 million copies worldwide. Not bad for a kid who was once told to sit in the corner, right? Here's the twist. Dav Pilkey, as an 8-year-old, was neurodivergent, diagnosed with dyslexia and ADHD. When we talk about neurodivergence, we often focus on how kids cope and how adults can help them. This episode takes a detour. We're exploring what happens when that neurodivergent kid grows up. Jumping into this story of Dav Pilkey and the book series Captain Underpants, can I request my young co-hosts to please introduce themselves?
I'm Agastya. I'm 12 and a half years old and I study in Nahal International School. And I live in Mumbai.
Hello everyone, my name is Darsh Satwik. I'm in 5th standard, I'm 10 years old and I live in Chennai.
I am Dhruv Agarwal. I am 11 years old and I live in Kolkata and I go to Lakshmipat Singhania Academy International.
Hello, my name is Dhruv Gandhi. I live in Mumbai. I am 11 and a half years old and I go to Children's Academy group of schools.
Hello, my name is Dhyan Gandhi. I am 11 years old and I live in Mumbai. I study in 5th grade in the school Children's Academy Malad.
Hi, my name is Nayra Maheshwari. I'm 10 and a half years old. I study in 4th grade in Children's Academy Thakur Complex. I live in Mumbai.
Hello, I'm Satwik Bhojnagarwala. I live in Kolkata and I go to the Heritage School. I like reading books and watching anime, and I'm 12 years old.
Welcome back, I think, to almost all of you. All of you have. I've had the chance and the pleasure of talking about some current event related news with each of you before on other podcast episodes. This one's about Captain Underpants and its author, Dav Pilkey. So, how many of y'all have read Captain Underpants?
I have.
Me.
So, I can see all of your hands have gone up in the air. So, everyone here has read the Captain Underpants book series.
An entire stack full.
You've got an entire stack full. Awesome. Wonderful. I have not read Captain Underpants. It wasn't a book series that was available when I was a kid, but I have flipped through some pages of one of the Captain Underpants books. Can one of you tell us who are the main characters in this Captain Underpants book
The
series?
main characters are firstly George Beard and Harold Hutchins, and their main principal, Mr. Crump, and also their teachers and all that, and their friends.
Captain Underpants is what? Is he the villain or is he the
He's
protagonist?
like the hero. He's the hero. Protagonist.
So he's the hero.
Basically, Captain Underpants is the hero, but before he gets hypnotized, he's sort of the villain. Mr. Krupp is the villain, and whenever George and Harold hypnotize him, he basically somehow he just like spins, and then he's like tra la la, and then you just see him wearing a cape and a pair of underpants.
He's not the villain. He's just like a bully.
The bully is not the villain. The bully is just one of the side characters, is it?
Not side character, somewhat main character.
Okay, and there are really evil people who are the villains.
Yeah, they're separate villains, and they're separate like
their
people who
teachers
don't like
and
them.
Most of the villains are like formed from crazy coincidences.
some of the villains are always the ones that are created in George and Harold's comics.
And then also there's not only one hero, there are many heroes like Plungerina, Boxer Boy, and the book is all about diarrhea and farts and etc.
I know. I'll come to
Basically,
the.
very scatological.
It's very scatological. Okay. So, is the context a school classroom? Do all the stories happen inside a
No.
school?
No,
No,
they don't happen inside the school. They most of the time they begin in the school with George or George and Harold is doing some prank on the teachers or something, and then that prank inadvertently relates to the teachers getting pulled into some kind of chemical mixture or something, turning them into a villain
Yeah, and
from one
then
of George and Harold's comics.
like some of their comics start in the school and then villains come out of a sewage tank.
And there are times when Melvin, this so-called nerd in his school who is extremely smart, invents gadgets, and then George and Harold, while playing pranks, end up using his gadgets. And again, when the prank goes wrong, some villain gets created.
Okay, I think I get the context. So, it's a bunch of school kids who prank teachers, and often these pranks go wrong. So, where does Captain Underpants feature in all of these?
Basically, these two found this George and Harold. They found a hypnosis ring of some sort, and then they hypnotized this mean Mr. Crab.
Hypnoring.
And then they hypnotized this evil school principal, and then they turned him into Captain Underpants. So basically, it says that whenever they snap in front of him, he will turn into Captain Underpants. And so, like, whenever these pranks go wrong and stuff like this happens, they just snap in front of Mr. Crab, and then he turns into Captain Underpants, and then he saves the day.
And plus, it was a mistake to create Mr. Crab into Captain Underpants. They only wanted to hypnotize him into obeying their orders, whatever they give him. For example, clean their shoes, iron their clothes, etc.
So, Captain Underpants is a character who's inadvertently created, and he's also the protagonist who will fix whatever pranks are originally created by those two characters.
Melvin, George, and Harold, all three.
All three. Okay. This definitely sounds interesting. If a 7 or an 8-year-old were to pick up a book series like this kind of pranks that kids like to play on the teachers is a very appealing idea, I think, for very young kids. It's probably appealing even for teenagers. Naira, what did you find most interesting when you read these books?
The most interesting part was how the comic was very nicely written. It was colorful and humorous in some part, and then in some part there were funny jokes appearing out of nowhere. Then all the fart jokes and everything. Basically the context in which the book is written is beautiful and gets me up.
And it's also very relatable, right? Because it's other kids like you who may or may not like their teacher and things like that. Okay.
Yes.
So, Dav Pilkey, the author of this book, so he says that when he was a second grader or probably even younger, I don't remember, he would always be up to some mischief or the other. He would be jumping up and down the class. He would be distracted and might even distract other kids around him. He was basically considered like the class clown. And the teachers obviously did not particularly like this behavior of his. So very often his second grade teacher would walk into class and say, "Mr. Pilkey, out." And that's it. He would be sent out to sit in the corridor and sometimes for hours. What do you think he did when he was sitting there for hours?
He would make comics and make the class laugh and all that by giving them their copies.
And I also heard somewhere that George and Harold were actually inspired by himself. It was two parts of himself. Like one character was made shy, quiet, and the other character was made outgoing and lively. So it was two different faces of himself.
Wow! Put yourself in Dav Pilkey's shoes. Dav Pilkey, the second grader who's been sent out of the class. What kind of a person do you think he grew up to be?
He
He
grew up to be a very outgoing person, very happy, very.
But as a second grader, when he was sent out of the class, do you think he would have been this outgoing, very happy?
He would be
he would
very
be very
shy.
upset, and he would be very upset and be shy. Like he would be, the teacher will
He would
scold
be
him every time. He
quiet.
would be scared.
He would never answer in the class, stuff like that.
So he'd be shy.
Yes.
Okay. Now, I know many of you have watched the videos that I had shared, which had interviews with Dav Pilkey. What did you find most interesting when he speaks about his own experiences as a child when he was sent out of class?
The interesting things I find about him when about his experiences in second grade is like I've observed this behavior like in my school too. I don't like to go, if the I don't like to go out or stand out. I don't like to ruin my record, or else people will think of me as something. I think that when he was sent out, he was not really scared as such. In fact, I what I really liked about him was the confidence he displayed. He was not scared of like, oh, what will people think of me now. He was sent out. He's like, okay, I'll make a comic book. I don't care. Well, he was also very witty, funny. As a person, he was confident. As a thinker, he was very creative. When he was sent out, he would not reflect. He would create. That's what I really enjoy about him.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. That attitude that he had must have been his superpower. That he was able to still go out into the corridor, turn the whole sequence of events that have happened to him in his own life into a nice, funny, witty joke that he probably drew as a comic or doodled and then shared it
And
with the rest of his
I've
class.
like I've like seen this attitude like in my class. Like there are some people who are considered to be not so smart academically, but they're very confident and they make the entire class laugh. And then there are these sudden moments where classes like English class and things where you are doing creative writing, they are actually outstanding at doing their work. So that attitude is present sometimes.
Wow, I'm glad that y'all are able to notice that oftentimes the scores that we get in exams for other subjects that may not involve creative work don't necessarily mean, I mean, if you've scored poorly in those subjects, don't necessarily mean that you're not smart. Wonderful. Thank you, Agastya. Satwik, what did you find most interesting?
Dav Pilkey was a person, even though, as Agastya said, even though when uh, he was like a very class clownish person, when he was in second grade or so, now he's a very gentle, kind person. And I also noticed that he likes to interact with kids a lot, and like he's just a really gentle person. And also, like, he's also has that kid mindset, which is something I don't think most adults have. And I also respect that about him, because like I've seen this change, and randomly, suddenly, when kids change from adults, their whole mindset changes. And I'm kind of surprised that, and I'm also kind of respect that how he did not go through this change, and he still likes stuff like underpants and poopy jokes and this kind of things, even after now being over the age of 40.
Yeah. You know, somebody once asked him this question about, why are so many of your jokes about farts and diapers and poop? And he said, when I was a second grader, that's the kind of stuff that would set people off. Everybody in my class would be rolling in laughter. Is that true? That when y'all, I don't know if it's true even today, do you still laugh at poopy jokes, or do you think you appreciated them better when you were a little younger?
I still sort of appreciate them, but I appreciated them much more when I was younger. Like, the only thing me and my friends used to talk about were poopy jokes.
I still find it funny, but after I've read all the books like twice or thrice, I don't find it very funny now. No, I've not outgrown them. I have that one book, Captain Underpants, book number 4. In
Mm.
that, Professor Poopy Pants, who is the villain, comes and changes everyone's name. And the one name I still think which is funny is Poopsie Chucklebutt.
Poopsie chuckle butt, very interesting. Okay, so you haven't outgrown those kind of jokes, but you've read the book so many times that the jokes have become kind of familiar to you, and you know,
Yes.
you already know what's coming. Acha, okay. Sorry, Naira, you were saying something.
You can't completely ignore them, but like it's obviously funny, but sometimes when someone throws a really lame joke about it, it's not that funny. But also, the jokes in these books are really funny.
I like jokes about diarrhea better. In the books Dogman and Captain Underpants. It kind of
Okay.
sets me still off.
Okay, so that's a range of views here. But I think what Dave Pilkey seems to have also managed to achieve is generate really interesting characters. Like Agastya said, that the kind of villains that he drew up were very unique. And he also seems to have done a brilliant job in building the kind of action that children would enjoy. If you all watch the interviews of Dave Pilkey, he says that as a child he was diagnosed with
He was diagnosed with ADHD. It stands for attention deficit
Hyperactive disorder.
hyperactivity disorder.
He was also diagnosed with what do you call it? Some ADHD syndrome and dyslexia.
Okay, these are two new words.
Dyslexia stands for those who can't refer to read or write, and dyslexia refers to those who have a hard time with math.
Yeah, dyscalculia is if you have difficulty dealing with numbers, and dyslexia is when you have difficulty dealing with characters, or you know, the written A, B, C, D, and all of that, the alphabets for reading. Has any one of you known anybody who has dyslexia? What do you think is going on in their minds? How are their minds very different? Do you know anything about dyslexia?
Main thing I know about dyslexia, before I had like a classmate who had ADHD. He would always be constantly running around, doing stuff. He would be constantly jumping, running. And like we never knew at that time why he was doing this. And then I learned that ADHD was a thing, and then I realized that he had ADHD. Maybe for them, they feel that time moves slower than they wanted to.
Also in the movie Tare Zameen Par, in that there is a boy who has dyslexia and AD. No, that boy only has dyslexia.
Correct. In the movie Tare Zameen Par, that boy has dyslexia and he has difficulty understanding characters the way you and I do. So their minds work very differently. Okay, so Darsh has had a friend who used to be running around. So that was how he understands ADHD. Does anybody else know here? Does anybody else know anyone with either dyslexia or ADHD?
I actually have ADHD.
Okay, so you have what is called attention deficit hyperactivity. Okay, so what is going on in your mind that you think is very different from that of others?
I'm always like
Sorry,
running
Dhruv.
around and such. Like I can't sit still.
Do you have trouble focusing on things when you have to learn?
Yeah, definitely. Like when I'm studying for my exams, 20 times I adjust myself. When I'm studying for my exams, I adjust myself like 20 times to stall. Yeah.
You adjust your posture 20 times. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay, why don't the others do? Do you all sit still when you're studying for your exams for half an hour or 1 hour? Do you all not adjust your postures?
I think that's normal. I need to adjust myself. I just can't sit for that long of a time.
Yeah, that's actually not. I would think that's not good for our body. As if we sit still, we'll become stiff and all that. I also think that our body parts or legs or head get numb because mine do.
Okay, so Dhruv, what everybody seems to have agreed with you with is, Dhruv Agarwal, I'm talking to you. What everybody seems to have agreed is that adjusting your posture 20 times when you're preparing for exams is completely normal. It's not hyperactive.
No, it's not just that also. Like 2 years ago, like I was a pure pain of everyone in the house.
Okay, what has changed then since then?
I become more mature and such.
Oh, so you grow out of ADHD as you grow older. Is that what you're saying?
Something like that.
Something like that. Okay,
Like-
wonderful.
Like I'm not that much like jittery, you know.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Even Dave quickly even Dave eventually got out of it, and now he's writing these amazing books. So at a point, as you start going older, maybe it grows less or something.
I think it also depends upon the maturity level of the people.
Mm-hmm. Naira, you said that Dav Pilkey today writes these books, so he's likely to have outgrown ADHD, right? But he had already created doodles about Captain Underpants and his dogman, and all of these were characters that he very likely created when he was a second grader itself, right? So he was doing all of this when he was diagnosed with what is then called ADHD. Oh, sorry, what is today called ADHD. So he didn't need to grow out of ADHD to write a book.
Yeah, now I think about it, you're actually correct. Like he doodled them in second grade, and then he also let out a book, I think in fourth or fifth, I think.
Yeah, that's true. So, who was Dav Pilkey's real source of support if his teachers did not really appreciate him for who he was?
His
parents,
mother in specific.
Okay, so moms are usually always the loving characters who appreciate their kids for who they are. I don't know if y'all have heard of this scientist called Thomas Alva Edison.
Yes, I have heard of him.
I've heard.
Yeah.
Thomas Edison,
Invented light bulbs.
Yeah.
Yeah, ma'am, I know one thing about him.
Hmm.
Like when he got expelled out of school, there was a letter sent of his, and he received it. But before he could open it, his mother came and opened it. And she read out the letter saying that this is to inform you, your child is too smart for our school from now on. He'll be learning with you or any other school, something like that. She reads it out like that, and then she teaches him, and he becomes very successful later because of her full-fledged support. And then one day he just picks up that letter again and reads it, and then it's an entirely different letter. It says that your child is expelled for his behavior, his inattentiveness, and lack of ability to cooperate in school. No, I'm just saying that's like how that's like the support your parents give you. They can like scold you when they need to, but then they can also sometimes lie to you for the right thing, and give all the support you need. Which is what I think Thomas Edison's parents gave to him, and Dav Pilkey's parents gave to him. So.
Absolutely. Beautiful story. I don't know if you all know. So, quickly to summarize, Thomas Alva Edison, the great scientist, when he was a child, today, when people look back at what he was very likely dyslexic, which means he had serious trouble reading. He may or may not have had ADHD. I don't know enough about that, but it is possible. And when he was expelled from school, I think as a fourth grader, I think he was expelled from school. At those days, people had little to no tolerance for a child who could think very differently or whose mind behaved very differently. His mother took the letter and she read it aloud, to her son Thomas, that Thomas, dear parent, your son Thomas is so brilliant that I don't think he will do well in our school. I think he's best served if he could learn from you at home. So Thomas Alva Edison felt so proud of his abilities and he stayed back at home and his mum tutored him throughout his life. She firmly believed in her son's ability to do very well. And of course, the rest is history. And he grew to become one of the world's greatest scientists. But interestingly, Thomas Alva Edison discovered that letter, which was still lying in his mother's drawer years later. And then when he opened it and he saw the letter was completely different. This letter said, basically the school said, sorry, we can't keep this boy at all. You please keep him at home. He's just incapable of learning. Or like what Nayra had mentioned earlier, no? The word learning disorder is sort of how the school viewed him. But interestingly, people with both ADHD and dyslexia are actually, in some ways, you could think of them as people with superpowers. They have unique abilities that you and I just don't have. People whose minds do not have ADHD or dyslexia. Do you know any such superpowers that they have?
If someone is blind, their ability to hear is extremely powerful. So when fundamentally when one thing is blocked, right, and there's something else that can enhance so much in place of what is not working. And I've actually read this from a trusted source that some blind people can actually do echolocation by just tapping their fingers very loudly, then it resonates back and they can hear it. So like I think in the same way, people with like dyslexia, as they showed in Tare Zameen Par, they showed that main character, he was a great artist. There's this syndrome called the Williams syndrome, in which people have this like they look like they're always smiling and and they're not good at maths. They struggle with math a lot. But when it comes to learning languages, acting, singing, and music, they are extremely good. So, that's the impact of like when something does not work, it just enhances the other senses overall.
Yeah, beautifully put. So the brain, if it gives us one power, often masks another power. So for people with ADHD, I don't know if Dhruv Agarwal, if you're aware of this, people with ADHD have an incredible ability for hyperfocusing. Which means if they like something, the way they can focus on something and get it done, very few others can.
Wait one second.
Sorry?
I'll just share something in the group chat.
No, can you tell me? This is an audio recording, so I need it on the podcast.
Basically, I made like a scratch game. It took me a couple of weeks, and I made Mario in Scratch.
Wonderful. So when you're saying that if you choose to work on a very difficult project, you can hyper focus and you can do it. Then you're not fidgeting, then you're not shifting 25 times in 5 minutes.
No.
Exactly. See, that is so the fact people with ADHD does not mean they can't focus. It just means they can't focus on things that are boring. But many others understand, okay, some boring stuff has got to be done. Let me do a little bit, get it done, and be over. We somehow manage to find that motivation. But people with ADHD have a harder time motivating themselves to doing things that they don't particularly enjoy. It is not that they can't focus. If they like something, they are capable of inordinate focus. I don't know if you have ever met anybody else with ADHD in your life, but you watch them, you will see that what really piques their curiosity, they'll be the best at it. What they don't enjoy, it's very hard to get them to do anything about that. Dyslexia, what superpower do you think people with dyslexia have? One example, of course, we know that Tare Zameen Par people have. We've seen that boy who is able to draw. He's very creative.
I think the people with dyslexia are very artistic and also are very stubborn about if I want to do this, I will do this, and they're very like they should also keep goals and all that so that they can get higher in level and like so slowly move out of dyslexia and into the real world.
Okay. So they're very creative. That is one superpower. Any other superpower? Do you all know?
I think that people, those who have dyslexia, I think it clicks me as they are capable of craft, or they can be good at maths, good at words. And
Mm.
then slowly and steadily, after they grow, they start to get the little by little, they get the knowledge of words, and then they become great at that too. So basically, then they are multitasker.
Wonderful. Yep. So people with dyslexia actually have multiple different kinds of superpowers. I don't know if there is only one such superpower. So some of them have the superpower of being very creative, very good at drawing, painting. My mother was dyslexic. Today she is a prolific reader. But I remember that my mother, she wasn't a particularly very good creative person, but she was very good with complex logical reasoning puzzles. She was very good in math also. So I've seen that in my family. So my family, we have all kinds of these minds. I've had my own. I have a daughter who has ADHD. She will ace certain subjects. She just cannot get herself to read incredibly boring subjects like geography. She can play chess. She can think multiple steps ahead, way faster than most of us can. So that's her superpower. So these kind of superpowers manifest themselves very differently. What is the one thing that you take away from today's recording?
This is not exactly related to the topic. Everyone's views are so different. And also, I thought I was probably going to be probably the only person who read Captain Underpants, and now I realize I'm probably the one of the few people who knows the least about it. Everyone's views, just noticing them, it's so inspiring and it's like super nice.
Just because people are slightly different to other people in certain areas doesn't mean they can't achieve the same as other people.
I learned that even if you have a learning disorder or such, you can still be good at subjects and become someone great.
The thing I would take from this podcast is that everybody, whoever has a mental disorder or someone without a disorder, has their own unique personalities and their traits. And the people with mental disorders are better with superpowers.
The thing that I took out from this podcast episode was that, like, when we call people deaf or when we call people blind, like, we used to call them deaf and blind, but now our generation has changed. Now we use words that are more respectful towards those people. Like, now we generally use, for those who are blind, we use visually impaired, or for those who are deaf, we use hearing impaired. So that is really good. That's really good to see how this generation has changed.
Ma'am, I think that one takeaway is that a disorder is not really a disorder, and that but it's like just a way to give your body or your brain to find another way to be better at something when it's facing a challenge. I won't call it a disorder or the fact that they are challenged. I'd rather consider that it's a way to improve in some other aspect.
Wonderful to hear all of your views and your takeaways. I am inspired by how y'all are thinking today. The world is not made of just people of one kind. We're all very, very different, and unfortunately, if we don't fit into one mold or one kind of a person, then the world has started calling the other kind of people with disorders. Thank you so much for joining me in today's podcast.
Bye.
Bye. I hope you all had fun.
Yup.
A lot of fun.
Yes.
All right. See you then.
Yes, I had a
Bye-bye.
lot of fun.
That's it from us today. We'll be back next week with yet another topic. In the meantime, if you're the kind of person who loves a good read and enjoys a chuckle, let me introduce you to the Lighter Side magazine. Yep, that's a children's magazine that I author. I take current events and I spin them into hilarious stories and comic strips. Think of it as the news, but with more doodles and way fewer yawns. You can grab your copy for just rupees 399 because joy shouldn't cost a fortune, right? You can find a link to it in the show notes below. Until next week, stay curious and I'll see you then.